see where we can do with 10 rounds.
Oh, yep. Right and low. 2 targets right, 4 targets low.
Okay.
Right, level the right edge, 2 targets low.
Pressing on that.
Yeah.
That's 219.
Left and low. 1.5 targets low, 1 target left.
Okay.
Right, level the bottom edge, 2.5 targets right.
I did hold a corrective on that wind.
Okay. Oh, just underneath, like 1/2 target low. That was really close. Left, level the bottom edge, 1 target left. You right?
Yeah. I should have made sure it was locked on. It's fine, but it can loose. Nice little wobble afterwards. Work out where the wobble was coming from. I could guess on where it's gone.
Tall and left. 4 targets left, 3 targets tall.
Yeah, that was the Charlie Trap came loose.
Ah, damn.
So that was our left and right.
Mongrel.
G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to show you a bit more about that rifle you're just watching, which is this one here. For people who know the channel, have seen us doing a fair bit with the 50 BMG or the 416 Barrett. It's all been with this rifle, and it's been a little bit, a lot of development for us in multiple ways, and a learning curve. Some directions I've taken in some of the design and understanding have been in the right fashion, some have been a little bit in the wrong fashion. And I suppose I thought I'd take this opportunity today. I've just been out and shot this thing with a couple of different things, run a few rounds through it, making sense of things, but did a little bit more learning, and I thought I'd share it. Hopefully the season will keep on going where it's going, and we'll be able to get out and prove all this sort of stuff and show you some hits on steel at 2 miles and that sort of stuff, which this has been to before, but always onwards and upwards, I suppose, always improving and learning each step of the way. Okay, to start off with the quick breakdown on the rifle, it is the Barnard GP action, so it's a 50 BMG action, single shot Barnard, super nice action, really precise, machined, strong, durable. I really like it. The action works really well and has done all the right things for us. It's sitting in a Dolphin chassis, big hunk of, there's three main parts, or there's two main parts to the Dolphin chassis. Dolphin guns, I think they're called, but they're from the UK. The chassis work really well for us. I've done bits and pieces with it. It is good, strong aluminium, and done the job really well. It is made to accept a V-block, which is a Barnard V-block, for the actual hook up in the center here, and then I've actually used some composite material, basically some high-grade Celastic, to actually make sure that although it's machined perfectly to fit inside there, it is slip in and slip out, and I've bonded it in there, essentially like a resin, but that's how that's held inside there. Runs a Barnard trigger, which is down at just on or just under a pound, so very light and lighter than I'd normally run a big rifle like this with the amount of thump this has got. But because of the control we've got of everything, because of how everything's working, it's where I'm comfortable and it's working nicely. 60 MOA Barnard rail on the top of it, and then the rest of it, I'll go into bipods and bits and pieces. The rest of it is as I've been shooting quite a while. I did make a change down the back here. It had some very much target rear end to this stock. I went through and put a little bit of weight in it, put a big heavy bag rider on it, put a bigger butt pad on it because of what we're going to do with it in the tactical sort of form that we sort of shoot in. That's all worked well, but the heavy bag rider I had, now it's got a lighter bag rider. This is still steel, but it's a small bag rider. I've lowered the profile a little bit, which lets me, I'd got it to the point, although I like to set it up where my chest is off the ground and everything's up, I was a little bit too high for some of the formats I wanted. So I had the bag rider even lower than this, and it was a lot heavier. There was a lot more weight in it, some really heavy steel in it. I got to the point where that weight wasn't being beneficial. With everything working well, that weight turned into too much inertia and was, unless I set up to it just right, would end up sort of throwing you around a little bit too much. Keep in mind when I'm pushing this one in the heavy stuff, we're well over 200 grains of powder behind an 800 grain projectile. So there's a fair bit of equal and opposite going on. And I got to the point where the truth of it is, the way I was shooting it, the extra weight that I had in it, and it was coming up to a 50-pound rifle. It's now under a 40-pound rifle, but it wasn't actually being beneficial. Changed the pistol grip over from what I shot the last seasons, just something I'm a little bit more comfortable with, but otherwise that's all been running as it is. The barrels, I had a True Flight barrel in here, which is what we did most of the 50 BMG testing with. Worked really well. That was a 33-inch True Flight barrel. Worked really well, did everything that I wanted to do, except for I didn't quite have the twist. The twist that was set up was 1 in 15, which is a standard twist for a 50 BMG, and I needed to really, I got to the point where I felt, although I was getting moderate stability out of projectiles, I wasn't getting enough. There was some dispersion in elevation dispersion, which I couldn't put down to bullet speed, I couldn't put down to how the rifle was shooting. I tried different bits and pieces, but really came down to the fact I was slightly understabilized for those projectiles, and that was causing me a shift in the dynamic ballistic coefficient of the projectile, which was then changing the elevation of the shot. So what I've done is gone to, this is a KS Arms barrel and a 1 in 13 twist, and we're at 36 inches. So we're out to where we're not going too far. I suppose a lot of people don't realise with the likes of a 50 BMG, a lot of the data you'll see from a 50 BMG is made for a 40-inch or a 45-inch barrel, made for the machine gun that it was. Big long barrels running the 50 BMG. I've come back, I'm staying in the practical side of things, of sort of semi-practical, I suppose, when you talk about a 40-pound or a little bit under 20-kilo rifle. But what I felt was more practical and should be able to make it work properly. So 36 inches, 1 in 13 twist, KS Arms, and I've been out for one shoot with it. And I'll get into that in a little minute. Those are the bullets there. Those are bullets that I have designed and had manufactured. I use a CNC shop. It's beyond my level of machining, but a CNC shop to produce those projectiles, and that's 3 of them loaded up. But I suppose the other interesting feature that some people know very well, some people don't, is this bipod on the front here, which is my sliding bipod system. I designed it for a particular reason. We do sell them. We did have them on the store. They are able to contact us to get them nowadays. It's using these linear bearings, and basically that's just the system, then you bolt your bipod to it. Now, the way I designed it to be used is the way I'm using it now, but I have gone through various iterations of the design to get to what we got here. The design is so that on recoil, the rifle can move smoothly backwards and forwards. Sort of. The actual design I was going with, and which I ended up proving, my main problem with shooting in a tactical format, not an F-class bipod, I want to be able to preload on my bipod, and I want to be able to shoot without the bipod feet moving. So in big target 50 BMGs, you'll largely see them on F-class skids, so they can just skid back and you just slide them forward, and they just skid back and slide them forward. It's not how I shoot, it's not how I'm set up, it's not what I want it to be set up like. I wanted to shoot on grounded bipod feet, and you'll see generally something like a 50 BMG with that much thump. When they're on grounded feet, they'll skid backwards anyway. They'll drag themselves in the dirt, and then you've got to reposition them and drag them back. So not ultimate for precision to have your bipod feet moving around, not preloading properly and skidding around. That's not awesome for what I wanted to do. So my design concept was to get something that meant that when it fired, I could preload against it, so I can have the feet grounded. When it fired, they would move back, but it wouldn't be dragging the feet. It would let the rifle move back on the top of it. To start off with, a very rigid bipod, which is what I'm working with. What I've figured out and what I feel works best for me, and it's looking really good in the way it's performing, is I'm got a normal heavy bipod. So this is the Atlas 5R bipod, big heavy bipod. Got some bits and pieces that I've worked on to make it work like I wanted it to, but I've got that mounted there. I've mounted my rail up inside the chassis, so I've got it up a little bit. It probably could be higher, but not easily in an engineering sense. So I've got it so the center of gravity is lower in this sort of setup. But the thing about this, and I've got a bit more to explain about it, but to start off with, I can actually then preload on my bipod like normal. Probably the actual shot, when it goes boom, which is probably only the first, before the bullet is released, the barrel's probably only come back, half an inch if it's lucky, probably half of that. So probably through the shot, the bipod, the slide hasn't even started to work. After the shot, but where I want those bipod feet after the bullet's released, I should say, then there's this cushion where it can actually come back and go back forward. As it pushes back off me, it moves backwards and forwards like that without disturbing the feet. So that's really the design of it. I'm sort of combining two things. I've got the preload, the flexibility, that rotation of the bipod legs in this sort of rotation here. That flexing is still all there, and I'm using that. That works quite nicely to transfer a certain amount of shock through the feet to give me a preload that I can stabilize to and that sort of stuff. But it also gives me this, after it shoots, it comes backwards and forwards without messing with the bipod feet. That's working really nicely. I started with it under here. I've moved it gradually through those different designs. I've got to the point where it goes up under here. And you'll see there's a couple of bolts front and back, which I simply can remove that flat plate off and to carry it, which I should say this goes to the range or out to our shooting position in two cases. So there's one for the barrel and I disconnect all this sort of stuff, but that all goes, the barrel and the action and the bolt and all that go into one case, and then the chassis and the bipod go into another case. So it moves in two cases, but that's it. There's no other weirdness about it. It's not too heavy to move like that. Works quite simply. Takes sort of 5 minutes to bolt the whole thing together and unbolt the thing, but that's the process. This, by the way, bolts on and off, so it's all bits and pieces. We can go with that. The things I've done with the bipod extra this season, because this is sort of where it ended up, I made a little, rather than the little ring that they have in the front here to tension the little lock-up nut in the front here, I made a little lock-up point so I could lock this up properly, just to stop from when you bash the bolt or when you're leaning on things a little bit, that actually locks up properly and solidly, so there's no movement there. And the other thing I did those who watch the channel and see stuff know that for the Atlas bipod we made these rigid leg extensions for the normal size Atlas bipod. I've shot them all season. I've been using these legs, and they make a wonderful improvement, only in a subtle way, but rather than having the little bounce that the normal rubber feet, which are good for general purpose, but when I'm going to the target stuff and I'm sitting on my mat or on the dirt, that little bounce I felt turned a little bit into a linear movement, how it transferred the initial shock. It produced a little bit of that. So I've made these solid ones to go on the normal bipod feet. Well, put that there. I did the same for the 5R. So I made these big heavy ones. The other thing in both of them, rather than a ball detent to go in there, they have a little screw. You put them in here, put the hole through, put the spanner through the hole and lock it up. So it actually bolts solidly to them, and there's no rubber to bounce around. So there's another feature which I put in there, which I feel, looking at the way the rifle's functioning, its form is really good on that score. We're super happy. So I think the 1 and 13 twist, and I suppose I'll go through before I get on the 416, because I did a little bit with the 416 as well, and we've got some more testing to do. But with the 50 BMG, which we've just done, we took 10 rounds out. That went very well onto target. We did a couple on the with a chronograph to see what sort of speed we're getting. We're just in the 2,700 feet per second, which was good. That's good speed. You know, that's up there for the 800 grain projectile in the format I've got. The way it's shot with lowering things down and that sort of stuff, I was super happy with that. That really moved into a nice situation of how I felt about it. Wasn't throwing me around, wasn't whipping my head around, wasn't doing that sort of stuff. So really nice on that score. And the dialing onto target, we were moving up pretty quickly. You know, everything dialed up got the speed, got into the general area. I'm still working out the ballistic coefficient of my projectile because I've made them, so I don't have one. And I basically is coming into about the 1.15 in a G1 ballistic coefficient, but I'm still working through that. I'll do a lot more data, a lot more testing before I go through and put a stamp on what I've produced. Not something I'm trying to sell, by the way. This is much more an R&D thing, me understanding bullet designs, me understanding all the details of that. Lots of details, and maybe someday I'll go through that in finer levels, but those are what they look like. But started to walk up on target, going really nicely, doing exactly what I wanted to do. Really drew, it was, as I adjusted up in a vertical level, it was changing the vertical level until I got onto target, and then it was holding a good vertical level, but it started to sort of dance around the target a little bit, which I didn't figure out what was going on. Only a short test, and it was only the second last shot that I saw after I fired the projectile. I saw a tiny wibble in my image. And realized, in actual fact, like 2 shots before that, or the shot before that, I thought I'd felt something in the rifle. I checked scope and that sort of stuff. What I didn't do is go forward and check the Charlie up the front. Nothing wrong with the Charlie. I had a cheaper, although solid, a cheaper little quick release clamp on the bottom of it, and the cam hadn't caught on it. So I'd put it on, it was nice and tight, but it had worked back. So over the first 5 shots of shooting, it was working back to where then the next 5 shots on the target, the Charlie track was wobbling around in the front of it, and I just didn't see that. I didn't see it. It looked like it was holding to the same place. I wasn't having to adjust things around or anything like that. But you know, 1 or 2 MOA of movement, you're not necessarily going to pick up through a shot in the way of where it's actually first pointing in something big like this. But that's going to make everything on your shooting. So I think was going really, really well, and even the way it was walking up, it wouldn't have shocked me if in sort of 6 rounds or 7 rounds we would have been on target on a 24-inch plate at 2 miles. That was the way it was feeling, but it went a little bit haywire at the end there, and that was simply because of I'd failed. I hadn't rechecked, but I hadn't actually cammed in and locked in the proper little the quick release on the Charlie track. I fixed that problem now. I've put on a quality one with a solid cam. It can't do anything wrong, so that's all fixed, and we've got to get out and test it again. Got to do lots of things and not very much time, but that's what actually happened there. So I should say this rail I built for the front because I had been running the Charlie track mounted to the front of the scope. I'd had no problems with that. I built up little brackets to make sure they didn't rotate and all those sort of things. But I was with something hitting hard like this, I was growing in concern about how much I was maybe stressing the rest of the scope through the extra weight and going through the recoil. Seen no problems with that, but listen, I could see a potential issue in enough shots down the road, enough years down the road. So although I still use that in cases for some of this, with the chassis, it's pretty easy to build this barrel guard up the front here to line it all up. Made it on an angle at 60 MOA so it suits the rail, and then that's worked really nicely. But like I said, you've got to keep your head switched on with all the bits and pieces, and that was a bit I missed. So anyway, as for this, the 50 BMG, this is working really well. By the way those shots are working, I would say we're only at sort of 12 shots through the barrel. I think the speed that we're going to end up in our round in our setup at the moment is somewhere just under the 2750, which is pretty decent for an 802 grain projectile with a 1.15 G1 ballistic coefficient. So very happy with that, working really nicely, and we'll see. If I get back out, hopefully I get back again this season and I can prove that, but I'm super happy with it, and the look of it, of how it's shooting, apart from watching the Charlie track wobble around, which is a bit disconcerting, I was super happy with it. Nice to shoot, working really well.
We'll see what we can see, mate.
I don't think I want to see shit start off with, but
yeah.
It'd be nice if we could. There should be somewhere in that ballpark. But let's see
Yeah.
what happens with the start of the equation.
Yep, good to go, mate.
Oh, 60. 1, 2. You all right?
Yep. Left, beautiful. 2 targets left about 10 o'clock.
Really?
Yep, just right there.
Wow. I wasn't going to expect that.
Awesome, but we'll see.
A little bit tight.
Okay. Tall and left. Level with left edge. 1 1/4 target stall. Left. Level with top edge, sorry.
Pretty consistent, aren't
Yeah. Left. Wow. 1/4 target left, 9 o'clock. You see the impact on the ground.
These are just the test ones to start off with.
Yep. Left, level with bottom edge, 1 1/2 targets left.
Going right, I'm not getting there.
Ah, okay. No.
instead of adjusting and responding, I'm asking.
Okay.
Sneaking up on everything.
Okay. Oh, just off left edge, 9 o'clock. That was pretty close.
It was, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. It held to those conditions,
Okay.
and up and over it went. So that's how much erratic even these big projectiles will get pushed.
Yeah. Oh, bottom left corner, just off. It was funny dust too.
That's funny, doesn't it?
Bottom right. Level the bottom
416.
end. Half target.
For those that don't realise what the 416 looks like, that is the 416 Barrett. As you can see, it's the same case. Well, it started off as the same case. It's been shortened and necked down to the 416 cartridge. It doesn't run as much powder, but it's still coming up to the 200 grains of powder. That is not my projectile, this one. This is a Lehigh Defense, the 494 grain projectile. Very good ballistic coefficient again, over 1 in a G1 ballistic coefficient. And we're running over 3,200 feet per second. So it works really nicely. What I wanted to do with this one, with the 416, was I wanted to do some tests. And I've sort of got an interim barrel which I'm doing some tests with to understand things. I went to the guys over at Swan Barrels who were able to step up to the plate and very quickly do us a left-hand twist barrel.
Oh, Jack, they hit. It hit. It must have gone through. Got it hit at 9 o'clock. Edge of plate. Plate moving. There was dust behind. On there, man.
Now, to do it the way we did to start off with, it's a little bit shorter than I probably will ultimately end up with, but I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to go to a faster twist, so down to a 1:11 twist from a 1:13 that we did have. We had a Luther Walther barrel at 1:13, and it was just a little bit slow, I think, for this, running to the same sort of problem, not quite enough stability. So it's what we could find. We tried it, got to that point, found the good bullet, the bullet we wanted, not quite stable at that level. So still okay, and still shot okay, but not quite to the level I want for what we're doing. So 1:11 and a left-hand twist. A little bit shorter. This one's only 32 inches. Ultimately, wherever we go with this barrel, we'll probably be around the 36 or 38 inches to make the 416 do all it can. But it's not doing bad either, don't get me wrong. Now, the left-hand twist I wanted to see. There's lots of stories, or lots of there was from keeping the barrel done up, keeping it tight, to the way the rifle shot into your shoulder, out to your shoulder. There's Coriolis and how it's the bullet spin drift versus Coriolis. There's all sorts of stuff over the years of why left hand and right hand. To a degree, it became about the UK did left hand and the US side of the world did right hand. Ultimately, all those things aside, how much did the torque of the projectile being pushed down and having to accelerate its mass to extremely high RPM through the twist, which way it goes, how much did it really make a difference? So even though this is a pretty heavy platform, there's a lot of force. A 500 gram projectile going to over 3,200 feet per second, there's a lot of force going to that sort of stuff. So I was wondering if I could see, feel, test any differences with that twist going on in the barrel. Now, spin drift, yes, versus your wind. That, with the wind always going one way, there's probably something to do with spin drift that you would probably enhance things a little bit. But in all other senses, what I just tested and what I can show you here, we really saw no differences whatsoever. No differences in left hand or right hand whatsoever. Is it worth the fuss? From my preliminary testing, no. Doesn't matter which way it twists. It really doesn't change anything. The amount of force there from a bullet being accelerated, pushing against those ramps there, is only mild from what I can see. I can't see any difference in the movement of the feet with left hand, right hand, admittedly heavy rifle, that sort of thing. Truthfully, no, I think it's not something to be concerned with. As for the extra stability side of things, yes, I've started to see improvements. I think there's some other dotting the I's and crossing the T's I want to do there. I did a test both with those and with the 500 grain ATEP. And just run 10 rounds in each form, and the thing's shooting really well. I was as much testing these other features of, my bipod system, the lock-up system, the feet, all that sort of stuff. The back down the back here shot really well, I should say, and I'm very happy with it. So those are things to come. All of them are. As to with the barrel, I'm not certain with the 416. I've got to do the maths and see if I should just take the leap and go with the big long barrel or carry on with the shorter one in the 416. At the moment, I really wanted to test the concept to the whole level with the Barrett, with the BMG, with these 50s, and try and prove. I put a lot of effort into designing and building these projectiles, and I haven't had the chance really to finish them off and prove them for what I thought they were. They've been okay, but I didn't quite see the accuracy. I'm starting to see that very well. Of course, got to make sure you bolt your elevation adder, the Charlie Chirac. Got to make sure you bolt that on properly before you go and prove anything like that. But I suppose that's an overview. I just wanted to show everyone what this thing is. There's a fair bit of effort to the setups on those big long shoots and that sort of thing. We're running super time 4, so I'm not getting as much done as I would like. But it still is heading down the right roads, and it's certainly something that I'm really happy to shoot behind. And I should say, for those people that periodically comment of why doesn't Sam shoot behind the big ones, why doesn't she do that sort of stuff, listen, it's not how we do things. She's not comfortable being pushed around by the big ones, and there's, in my opinion, and I would say this to anyone, if there's little people or recoil shy people in any form, I'm not saying Sam's recoil shy, but I am saying she's half my size, this has a lot of thump. But if people are not completely comfortable there, they don't have to. There's no good reason, not even ego is a good reason to go and do that. It can cause other problems for people who want to push someone into it, or someone who seems gung-ho, they want to go and do it. You have to be aware that there has been many occasions over time where someone has done that because of ego, because of peer pressure, because they thought they'd want to, and then it actually shook them a bit too much. And it can actually cause repercussions down the road. It can be the fact they don't really want to get behind things. They develop a flinch. They decide they don't want to really be around the firearms because they went too far. And it's for us who can oversee that sort of stuff, us to take responsibility of the situation, that can say, listen, no, maybe this one here. Or if they don't want to, like Sam would prefer not to shoot the big ones, that's why she doesn't. And so for the people who asked there, sorry, that's not what you want to see, but that is a case of us keeping our principles first, and doing the right thing by what Sam shooters, and to my point, putting the right foot forward for all people to see those same decisions. Anyway, I think that's about what I can tell you with this one. Super happy with it. All the bits and pieces, there's 4 different barrels we've had through this. All of them work very well, and they've all done the job properly. The Barnard action, listen, super nice to work with. Barnard helped us out. They did us a decent price on this one here for us, so it helped us in doing it, but super, super nice product to work with. The Dolphin chassis, Dolphin company helped us with that as well. Mick over there helped us with this, and it's been great. Using it in a standard form would work really nicely also, but it's one of those chassis that's really nice to work with. Good, heavy, strong aluminium makes it really easy for me to do my sort of stuff with it. Up the front, the sliding bipod system, like I said, I use it in a particular way. The full linear thing, and people wanted to put rails front and rear. Hey, listen, you do what you're chasing. I'm trying to keep that tactical dynamic to what I do. I'm trying to keep it real in that sort of level. And like I said, what I've ended up with is actually having the mix of the normal bipod with the normal sort of flex and that rotation of the legs for preload, and then the sliding bipod bit is just to stop those feet from being dragged back when it pushes me further. But all working really well, really happy with it, and I hope to be able to get back out and prove it, maybe put a hole through steel at, you know, I did 2.2 miles with the 50 BMG. We'll see. But listen, super happy with it. Let us know any comments or questions you've got below. I'll answer what I can, but like I said, super happy. Hope you liked the video. Thanks for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.